Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to News Talk with yours truly, coming to you from the great state of Texas, Houston, Texas, to be precise. It's a privilege to be with you again today. Please, if you are joining by way of the social media, do me the favor. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button on YouTube and the share button on Facebook. Thank you for tuning in. I'd like to welcome all of you tuning in from continental Africa, Europe, North America. Everywhere you are in the world watching us either through social media or satellite television. Thank you for tuning in. I am very excited with the broadcast I bring to you today. So please go ahead, hit that share button. Let everybody know the anchor man is not live. I am indeed alive, as you can see. This is not AI, this is Chris Ano himself. So please stay tuned. When I come back, I will take you into the subject for discussion tonight. It is going to be very, very exciting. Stay tuned.
ABS can help you reach your target audience like never before. Advertising on ABS, you'll benefit from our extensive reach and dedicated viewership. We offer special advertising packages during primetime slots and popular shows. You'll also be featured on our social media platforms, reaching an even wider audience. Don't miss out on this opportunity. Take your business to the next level. Contact our advertising team at absafricatv@gmail.com. ABS can help you reach your target audience like
The West lectures the world about democracy, then it bankrolls dictators. It condemns oppression, then it congratulates stolen elections. In this book, The Hypocrisy of the West, veteran journalist Chris Anu exposes the double standards that define modern global politics. From Africa to the Middle East and beyond, Western powers present themselves as champions of freedom, while quietly propping up tyranny in the name of stability and strategic interest. This book pulls back the curtain. Why dictators are rewarded after rigged elections. How human rights become optional when power is at stake. Why some wars provoke outrage and others silence. How selective justice shapes the global order. Written in a bold, direct, and uncompromising voice, The Hypocrisy of the West is not a theory, it is a reckoning. It challenges official narratives, names uncomfortable truths, and forces readers to confront a world governed by convenience, not principle. You should read this book if you have ever questioned why some dictators are sanctioned while others are celebrated. Get your copy of The Hypocrisy of the West today on Amazon. Read it, question everything, then decide where you stand.
All right, thanks for staying put, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, I will take you into a very important subject, that which I think could determine what happens in Cameroon in a few months ahead. Talking about Paul Biya's regime. For how long can it stay in spite of all the crisis surrounding that regime? I'm going to enumerate some of those crises tonight and have my panel weigh in on it, and we discuss it. And then we'll talk about the celebration of 11 February in Cameroon, what it means and what it shouldn't mean. Those are the two subjects I will be discussing tonight, and of course, the phone lines will be open for me to take your phone calls. And now I will take you into my monologue for today. Ladies and gentlemen, focus on the 4 points or the 4 issues which I think could sink the regime of Paul Biya. The 4 things which could sink the regime of Paul Biya. ladies and gentlemen. That is what my monologue tonight is going to be all about. And again, if you are just joining, go ahead, hit your share button and let everybody know we are live at this moment. All right, and let me take you into the monologue. For decades, Paul Biya's regime has survived on a combination of fear, inertia, elite accommodation, and internal indulgence. Time and again, analysts have predicted its collapse, only to watch the system absorb shocks and stagger forward. But today, Cameroon is no longer merely wobbling. It is structurally failing. Four converging forces, each destabilizing on its own, are now interacting in ways that threaten the very survival of the regime in Yaoundé. Together, they paint a picture of a state that is no longer governed, only managed poorly by competing elites around an absent center. The crisis surrounding the port of Douala, that is number one, is not just a contractual dispute. It is a diagnostic moment for the Cameroonian state. The port is Cameroon's economic blood vessel, handling the bulk of imports and exports, not only for the country, but also for landlocked neighbors in Central Africa. Control over its operations is synonymous with control over the economy itself. At the heart of the dispute is a cargo scanning contract involving SGS, the Swiss firm that has long played a role in port operations in Douala. What should have been resolved through clear executive authority instead descended into a public power struggle between institutions of the same government. The Prime Minister, Joseph Dion Ngute, issued directives affirming SGS role, while countervailing signals allegedly emanated from the presidency's General Secretariat. The result was paralysis, confusion, and open defiance within the administrative chain. This is not a minor embarrassment for the country, for La République du Cameroon. It is a revelation. It tells investors, traders, and citizens alike that Yaoundé no longer speaks with one voice. In the functioning state, disputes of this magnitude are resolved decisively at the top. But in Cameroon today, they linger unresolved because there is no effective top. Dion Ngute's attempts to restore order have so far not worked. Not necessarily because he lacks intent, but because authority itself has become fragmented. Markets are acutely sensitive to such signals. Contract uncertainty erodes investor confidence. Bureaucratic infighting signals risk, and the absence of a final arbiter suggests institutional decay. When a state cannot enforce clarity at its main port, it is effectively confessing that it no longer controls the levers of its own economy. The Douala port saga is therefore emblematic of something larger: the disappearance of command authority at the center of the Cameroonian state. That was number one. Number two, debt without development, mortgaging a generation to preserve a regime, a people, a set of people. If the port crisis exposes administrative collapse in La République du Cameroon, Cameroon's ballooning debt reveals strategic bankruptcy. In recent months, Paul Biya authorized the state to borrow trillions of CFA francs, figures so large they are almost abstract to the average citizen. Yet behind these numbers lies a devastating reality. Cameroon is borrowing not to build, but to survive. Much of the new debt is earmarked to repay older obligations, service arrears, and maintain basic fiscal solvency. This is the hallmark of a government caught in a debt spiral. What makes this moment especially tragic for Cameroon is what their loans are not being used for. They are not, ladies and they are not financing large-scale industrialization. They are not creating employment for the millions of young Cameroonians entering the labor market each year. They are not rebuilding war-ravaged communities or investing in human capital. Instead, ladies and gentlemen, a significant portion of discretionary spending continues to be absorbed by security operations, particularly the grinding and unresolved war in Amazonia. The consequences are generational. La République du Cameroon is a young country demographically, yet its youth are being saddled with debts they did not choose, incurred by leaders, elders, who will not live to see them repaid. This is intergenerational injustice masquerading as fiscal policy. International lenders may tolerate this for now, but tolerance is not trust. Cameroon is increasingly viewed as a country borrowing time rather than building a future. When debt ceases to translate into development, it ceases to be sustainable. And when a state survives only by rolling over old obligations, it becomes hostage to its creditors and to its own stagnation. Number 3 issue is that of power. Power without governance, a regime split against itself. Perhaps the most dangerous sign of all is a fracturing of power within the regime itself in Yaoundé. Paul Biya's prolonged absence from daily governance, whether due to age, health, or choice, has created a vacuum at the heart of the state. Into this vacuum have stepped rival factions, none of which possesses full legitimacy or authority. The result is a government that exists on paper, but cannot act coherently. On one side are hardliners clustered around the President's General Secretariat, often associated with Ferdinand Ngongo. Their approach is security first, intolerant of dissent, and deeply suspicious of reform. On the other side are softer technocrat elements, including Prime Minister Dion Ngute and segments of the Yaoundé elite, who understand, at least rhetorically, that the status quo is unsustainable. The status quo is unsustainable. These factions do not merely disagree, they cancel each other out. Decision-making has become so slow and contested that even routine acts of governance stall. This explains why, months after the October elections, Cameroon still has no new cabinet In any functioning republic, elections are followed by reconstitution of government. In Cameroon, the absence of a new cabinet is not procedural delay. It is evidence of incapacity at the top. The president, constitutionally empowered to appoint and dismiss ministers, appears unable or unwilling to do so. Without a decisive figure to arbitrate elite competition, appointments become battlegrounds. The state grinds to a halt, while factions wait each other out. I beg your pardon, ladies and gentlemen. A regime can survive repression, economic hardship, or even war. What it cannot survive indefinitely is internal paralysis. That is what Cameroon is at the moment. The last point is the Issa Chiroma question, the crisis of legitimacy that will not fade. The most volatile factor threatening the regime is the unresolved legitimacy crisis stemming from the October 12 elections, particularly the claim that Issa Chiroma Bakari was denied victory. Whether one accepts Chiroma's claim in full or not is almost beside the point. What matters is that a significant portion of the population of La République du Cameroun believe the election was neither free nor fair, and it was corrupt and fraudulent. This belief has hardened into political memory, especially among urban youth and opposition strongholds. The regime's response is false arrest and denial, which has only deepened skepticism. Chiroma's case is dangerous for the regime because it combines three destabilizing elements: a credible national figure, a contested electoral process, and a population already primed for disillusionment. Unlike fragmented opposition movements of the past, this challenge strikes at the procedural legitimacy of Biya's continued rule. Compounding this is growing internal unease. Reports suggest that the African Union is watching also. It is watching Cameroon more closely, not out of humanity, but out of strategic fear. Cameroon is an economic and geographic key player in Central Africa. Instability in Cameroon would swirl outward, disrupting trade, fueling migration, and exacerbating, ladies and gentlemen, regional insecurity. What exactly the African Union may do remains unclear, but the mere fact that Cameroon is now viewed as a potential regional flashpoint underscores how far the country has fallen from the image of stable authoritarianism that once shielded Biya from scrutiny. No regime collapses because of one crisis. It collapses when multiple failures converge and reinforce each other. And that is what is happening in Cameroon. Cameroon has reached that point. An economy whose central port in Douala is mired in institutional conflict. A fiscal strategy that mortgages the future to preserve the present. A ruling elite locked in factional paralysis. And a legitimacy crisis that refuses to be buried. These are not temporary storms. They are structural fractures. And they suggest that Paul Biya's regime is no longer governing a country. It is managing decline. The question is no longer whether Cameroon will change, but how and at what cost. If the current trajectory continues, that change may come, not through reform, but through rupture. And when a regime collapses under the weight of its own contradictions, it rarely leaves stability in its wake. Cameroon is on the brink. That is the case. The only uncertainty left is whether its rulers understand that time has finally run out. And that we'll probably find out very soon. And that is my monologue on this subject, ladies and gentlemen. At this moment, I bring in my panel for tonight. I am being joined by Eric Chinje joining me from the UK. It's a pleasure to have you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And I also have another Eric, this time Eric Acha, also joining me from the UK. It's a pleasure, sir.
A pleasure indeed, Chris. That's all.
All right. Let's get on to the issues here, which, Eric, I am very sure you are very familiar with this. You have vested interest in the Cameroon economy, and you know exactly what is being reported and what is going on in the port of Douala. This is the powerful man. Look at him there. This is the powerful man who is calling the shots in Douala. Cyrus Ngo. That is the Director General of the Port of Douala, who has come out and said SGS, the Swiss scanning company that manages operations in the Port of Douala, must go. And Cyrus Ngo, I understand, is in alliance with the Secretary General at the Presidency, referring to Ferdinand Ngo. I think you may see him here with Mr. Biya. That is Ferdinand Ngo. So Ferdinand Ngo is working closely with Cyrus Ngo, and they are calling the shots and telling SGS that it must stop or end operations in the port of Douala, talking about scanning of everything that goes out and comes in the port of Douala. Now, it resulted into a conflict, and the Prime Minister, Dion Ngute, had to intervene to suggest that SGS sign a contract with the government minister, which means with the government. And for some individuals, that is in this case, Cyrus and Ngongo, to come out and say SGS must end operations sends a bad message to investors trying to invest in the country. So this is a brief of it, and I understand from my findings that there is this transatlantic company which is already working in the port in Kribi, and Cyrus and Ngongo want that company to come in and take over operations in the port of Douala. The transatlantic company in the Kribi alone is owned by an Israelis. Eric, tell us what you know on this subject, please. If you can bend your camera, please. Bend your camera slightly.
Don't know if that's better.
A little more.
It's quite stiff where I am. Maybe let me sit up a little bit. This is better.
That is good.
Yeah, maybe I was leaning a bit backward listening to your excellent monologue there. Please. Right, yeah, I think, first of all, thanks again for having me on your show here, Chris. It's always a pleasure having the opportunity to discuss these pertinent issues. As you rightly stated in your monologue, what we are seeing at play here in Cameroon is not just the crisis at the port. The crisis you are referring to is the tip of the iceberg. The situation is telling or is showing Cameroonians what we have been discussing for years. what we've been trying at every single opportunity to tell Cameroonians, that there is a power vacancy in Cameroon. Yes, the crisis have exposed that vacancy, because you wouldn't explain to the world how on earth two institutions within the same government are fighting over the authority of the Port of Douala, which is a major economic source, a major revenue source for the country. You have the one clan, or you have the one side in this battle being led by Ferdinand Gongo, hiding behind his hitmen that he sends forward. And on the other hand, you have the Mutaze, the Minister of Finance, who somewhat has the powers and the say in this issue. He's the Minister of Finance. He runs and oversees the governor, the customs in Cameroon, and especially at that port. They, the government, with the Prime Minister and John Gote, as he clearly said it, had an agreement with the SGS to run the scanning operations at the port of Douala, and this has been going on for, I don't know, since 2015, smoothly. And then when the Transatlantic Company, which is the one currently running the affairs at the port of Kribi, again linked to Ferdinand Gongo and the Israelites who owns the company, decided to step or to overstep and take control of the scanning at the port of Douala. They were told politely, there is an agreement, there is a contract with SGS that is still running. It needs to keep running. It is running till 2032, from what I gathered. You can't just out of a sudden, because you want to bring in the transatlantic, breach that contract. It doesn't happen that way. These conversations had been going on in the background and came to the open earlier this year, around the early January. That's when the public first heard of the crisis. But talks have been going on for long in the background, where the Ngongo's camp was being told that there is a valid contract with the SGS that runs until 2032. That wasn't sufficient, or that wasn't going down well with Ngongo, and he was doing all he could to arm twist the other party to be kicked out of the port. All this being supported, orchestrated by the Cyrus Gore, the DG, the Director General of the Port of Douala. Now, where things got out of hand is where Ngongo stepped back and didn't use what he had been using for many years, the so-called on the high instructions of the president. He is deciding this or that. He didn't do that this time around. What happened was he stepped back and pushed forward the chief of staff, who was a military man, whom we all heard for the very first time, signing a decree to what, I had a conversation and told people to me this was an attempted administrative coup, because you brought in the chief of staff, that the presidency, to sign a decree, to sign a letter purporting to be on the instructions of the president, instructing the SGS to pack out of the port of Douala. When there was a pushback and resistance, it turned out it was all a lie. So they had made this up. Now it begs the question, how many times has Ferdinand Gongo lied to Cameroonians using that so-called on the instructions of the head of state? This is what Cameroonians should be asking. This crisis at the port is just exposing these lies. Ngongo has been exposed. He's been caught pants down on how he has abused the powers, the signature of an absentee president. He has told the world finally that Paul Biya is not in control of anything in Cameroon. Because where we are, if Paul Biya was in control, it would have been simple. He would have intervened, stepped in, and made a decision on whether to maintain the contract with the SGS or ask them to pack and leave. So the back and forth between the Motase camp, where we can clearly see now that Prime Minister John Butte, with his own authority and with all fairness, is in that camp, is fighting at loggerheads with Ferdinand Gongo, being spearheaded by one person that they don't talk very often. There's one criminal in Cameroon that Cameroonians will come to realize, the wife, Chantal Biya. She is a major player in all what is going on. Ferdinand Gongo is the hitman at the front, but Chantal Biya is a key player in all these gimmicks going on there in the country. And time shall tell. So just to fast forward it, this crisis at the port is exposing the struggles or the infighting in Cameroon and risk deteriorating. Because at the moment, we hear both companies, both the Transatlantic and the SGS, are operating in that same port. So people are complaining, business people are complaining of double invoices, where you have on one hand, some are being scanned by the SGS and some containers are being scanned by the Transatlantic. They're at the same port in Douala. But what is interesting now is that the Minister of Finance, Paul Motase, issued a letter instructing all custom officers to disregard any invoices or scanned documents coming from Transatlantic, meaning that if you, a businessman who is imported or who wants to export containers, choose to go have your container scanned by Transatlantic, you will end up being blocked, because those to do the visit, because when you do the scanning, those things, if there is a need to then do a physical visit, that's being done by custom inspectors. Those custom inspectors are under the direct authority of the Minister of Finance. So if he has instructed them to disregard any scans coming from the Transatlantic, and you, a businessman, through pressure or whatever reasons, go have your container scanned by Transatlantic, they will get blocked when you're facing the custom officials. And that's both ways, whether importing or exporting. So there is a serious crisis fermenting there in Cameroon that people haven't realized yet. And it will get to a point where we don't know how it will boil down, but it will get to a point where we may start seeing punches or things getting really serious. Yeah, I'll hold on this and elaborate a bit later as we keep having this conversation.
All right, let me get to Eric, because I know Eric has lots of informants within the system in the country. How deep, Eric, can you measure the degree of what we see, this division between the cabal, the elite that rules the country? Because what is going on in Douala Port can essentially destabilize every fabric of the economy in that country. If there is, the Prime Minister Ngute came out and said, well, SGS has a contract. As a government, we signed that contract, we have to keep that contract. But as we hear from Eric, Ngongo and his team, Cyrus Ngo and Ferdinand Ngo, they are saying, well, we really don't care about keeping contracts. We see the stalemate, the inability for the regime to make decisions. This couldn't happen 10 years ago when Biya was still Biya, isn't it? Because you called the shots.
Yes, Chris, and thanks for again bringing me in. A couple of things. One is I can't, in another half hour I must have to leave because I'm supposed to be in a meeting which starts at the top of the hour. It's about to start, but I'll be here with you as long as I can. Secondly, I want to welcome Eric the Younger. The two. You can look at the beards,
Oh, yeah, right.
Look, it's important.
Eric, please adjust your camera, get your image on the middle of the camera, not to your right.
Tell me, is that better?
Bend it down slightly.
This?
Yes, that's good. Yes, that's good. Go ahead, please. Go on.
Look, it's important that everybody who has a stake in that piece of land called Cameroon, and you may want to call it Amazonia, but it's the same land we're talking about. Everybody who has a stake in that piece of land needs to understand what's going on. Eric has said a whole lot, very important, but even beyond that, it's important to understand what's going on. There is a fight for power and for money. And this fight is taking place at, it's the Cameroonian people who may end up having to pay the price in every which way. Power, it's becoming clear who the fight is between. On the one hand, and let's be clear about this, on the one hand, very clearly, it's Chantal who has to maintain the prerogatives that she's garnered as First Lady and her children, supported in that by the man who has learned how to manipulate power over the years. He didn't have this before, Mr. Ngongo. So on the one hand, you have Ngongo, Chantal, and the guy called Baboke, and a host of others. And on the other, we have a whole host of people, Mutaze, Ayolo, whom you had on the screen a few minutes ago with the crowd, including the president, Frank Biya, who is being pulled along because of his name. Frank himself is not totally interested, but he understands that to maintain power, he has to be on one side or the other, and he's chosen to be with his uncle, Montaze. So these are the two forces that are now, and then the Montaze side, which includes very important people like Eso Laurent, the Minister of Justice, a very powerful minister, and now they have the good fortune of having the Prime Minister on his side. And the Prime Minister is coming in because he ultimately has the authority to approve who becomes the container scanner, the company that will scan containers at the Douala airport, at the Douala port. So that brings in the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister comes in with his government. And now he's identified with one side of this battle, and a battle that people may carry to which will ultimately define or maybe help us resolve the crisis of power in Cameroon. Now, when we look at things, we must see them from that prism. We must take this into account. If you look at Ngongo, the image you have on the screen now, Mr. Ngo Cyril is a cousin to Ngongo. The head of the port in Douala is a cousin to Ngongo. They've taken and Ngongo has authority over the BIR, the most equipped wing of the army, which is why he sent in the BIR to kick out SGS, which the Prime Minister and the government supported. Fortunately, that didn't happen because that would have the war would have gone, would have come out to the open. They've been forced to take a step back, and Mr. Cyril Ngo, whom you're showing now, Ngongo's cousin, he has called, and this happened a few hours ago, he's invited the lady in charge of the SGS, the other company, to come into a meeting tomorrow for them to try and resolve this. So they're trying to resolve it through dialogue. But nobody should be deceived. Nobody should be deceived. It is all about the power grab that's going on in Cameroon right now. And these fellows will destroy the country. Why are they so much after the ports? Because Cameroon as a nation has three main sources of public revenue. One is taxes. Everybody is taxed and they keep increasing that. Even mothers who sell beignet by the road, they want to tax them. So taxes is one. The other is the ports. Almost a third of government revenue comes through the ports. Douala, Kribi, and they control that. Gongo and his people control that. They control Kribi because his cousin is there, but they wanted to control Douala also because it was Mutaze, the Minister of Finance, who has direct oversight of SGS that was there. Now, sorry, I just got distracted because my meeting is starting. So we have that situation where they also wanted to take over Douala. And now realizing, and then they brought in the army to help because Ngomgo controls the army. So we're beginning to see this power grab the fight come to the open. And I was actually rooting for it because it would have helped us resolve this problem. But they realized how dangerous it was going to be for them, and what they've done is call for a truce. And that meeting is going to take place tomorrow. Cameroonians should keep their eyes open, watch that. But they should not accept either outcome. What about the outcome? Because they're going to cut the pie in two. It's still an arrangement that will have these people end up with resources that should be funding our roads and our hospitals and our schools. No, they will end up with most of that money ending up, being taken to offshore accounts that belong to them. We should not be fooled. That's what's happening. And it's tomorrow. So pay attention to what happens tomorrow at that meeting on the 7th floor of the port headquarters in Douala. That's where it's going to take place.
Who is going to be at that meeting, Eric? Who will be at that meeting?
Pay attention to.
Who will be at that meeting, Eric?
At that meeting, there will be this lady who's in charge of SGS. So SGS, the Société Générale de Surveillance, that's SGS. There will be the Director General and her team will be there. The head of the Transatlantic, this company, which is being projected as a national company, but which in effect is a company owned by, with the defining the main owners include Mr. Ngongo, of course, Chantal Biya, through her children. They're all a part of it. So projecting it as a national company is as false as it gets. But so the Transatlantic will be represented, SGS will be represented, the Minister of Finance, I'm sure, will have representation at that meeting tomorrow, and they have the audacity to put this as the main subject, agreeing on how we'll split the pie. That's what's going to happen tomorrow.
Interesting. Eric, I see you nodding your head there. Tell us what is on your mind on that reference.
Yeah, I'm just nodding my head, listening to what Big Brother Eric is saying there, because it's all fact and painful. It's a shame to see that Cameroon has deteriorated to this point, and Cameroonians keep on accepting what we all are seeing. At some point, you would think people would come to say enough is enough. We've seen it enough. This country belongs to all Cameroonians. You can't keep on robbing us right before our own very eyes. And you get exposed, and you have that audacity to carry on doing business as usual and telling Cameroonians we are going to do what we have been doing because we know you will do nothing. Now, you really can, at times I feel pained and get frustrated with the fact that this regime, this government, starting from Paul Biya, now the Ngongo and his own gang, have mastered the game. And they've mastered Cameroonians, knowing whatever they do, Cameroonians will agitate briefly and get back into their comfort zone. Yeah. They will agitate and talk, make conversations, but they know that Cameroonians will record. They know this, and that's why they keep doing what they are doing here. Because what we are seeing playing before our own very eyes, playing before the international arena, cannot happen anywhere else. It can't happen. Because the facts are there. It's glaring. There is a power vacancy. There is an in-house fighting for power grab. Two camps have been identified, one fighting the other one, while Cameroonians are watching. And then they are trying to resolve the conflict by decide on how to divide the cake among themselves. And Cameroonians continue to watch. So at what point will Cameroonians say enough is enough? When we get into the depth conversations and we start hearing those figures and what is really happening in the Saints, it's frightening. You know, I've never missed the opportunity to jump onto this issue, but I believe today will be exceptional because where we are today, Cameroon is in crisis. It is heading in a situation that I can only compare to the early 2000s. I don't know if you're familiar with the Argentinian situation where they say the money kept rolling. Let me not dive into that. It's a subject which we will discuss today. But this issue at the port of Douala exposes this government. It tells Cameroonians and the world that Paul Biya is not in control. For many years, Paul Biya has not been running the affairs of Cameroon. It has been Ngongo, Chantal Biya, and the clique being supported by those that are fighting them today. Because what we are seeing today is that fight on who will continue after Paul Biya is officially announced to be incapacitated or announced not to be available. That's what is going on there at the moment, that continuity. But for how long will Cameroonians continue to accept this? I've just seen my name flagging on the screen there. I don't know if that was intentional, Chris. You've spelled my own Eric with an H. I don't know if it was... well, it's okay. Maybe you wanted to differentiate me from the elder brother Eric Chinje.
We have the technicians
I've just an H there. My Eric hasn't got a H.
We have the technicians take care of that. But let's move from the Douala crisis to the debt crisis. Cameroon, I think 2 weeks or so ago, Biya put out a statement authorizing the government to borrow 1.5 trillion CFA francs. The question is, what have you gathered, Eric? What will this money do?
Which of the Erics? Big Eric or
Eric Jr.
Elder or Eric the younger? You have to.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. The monies. You remember the last time I appeared on your show here, I discussed the debt crisis in Cameroon, and I highlighted an issue which Cameroon has been using year over year to deceive the international community as well as Cameroonians. This issue where they would tell you our debt to GDP ratio is all right. It's within that 46-45 rate, which is comparable to countries like Ghana, the Ivory Coast, and the rest. I did really get into this to explain to Cameroonians the deception in all of these figures. Because you can keep telling the world or telling Cameroonians that we are not doing so bad. You guys are making a lot of noise about our debt situation as if 43% is out of the ordinary. Ghana is within that range. Ivory Coast is within that range. I made it clear in that last conversation that the difference between Cameroon debt situation and the countries like Ivory Coast, Ghana, is that when you go to these countries, you can see what the money they are borrowing is doing. It's visible. You can see the system somewhat functional. You can see development. You can see industrial development. You can see the streets of these cities being cleaned. I'm going down that low. You can see infrastructure. You can see the hospitals. You can see schools. So, yes, their debt to GDP ratio could be in the 43, 47, or even 2 or 3 points higher than Cameroon, but you can see what they are doing with their money. Unlike in Cameroon, where you are hearing of these astronomical figures, but you don't see what that money is being done with. You don't see where that money is going. The latest tranche of money, that 1.6 billion, is 1.6 billion, not trillion, which is 2.9,
No,
I think, billion.
It's trillion.
Is it trillion?
Yeah, well, it is. It's trillion.
Anyway,
I think it's 1.4, 1.5.
What that figure, what that money is being borrowed to do is to pay back the existing loans. And you remember in our last conversation, I told you lenders love Cameroon because Cameroon is a good payer. Cameroon is good at paying back loans. Paying back loans not because they are making a lot of money from the country, but because they are good at borrowing to pay. Borrowing to pay. And that is how Cameroon has been living. The excesses or the extras on what they are borrowing ends up in offshore accounts. So after they've tried servicing those debts, whatever is left is shared among themselves and put into offshore account. Where we are today, this figure will increase. Remember this figure, because I want to emphasize on it. The external debt services to revenue ratio, that for Cameroon is increasing, and it will continue to increase astronomically with this last money they've just borrowed. And those are red flags for international lenders. Those are red flags because they are servicing now their external debts at a faster rate than they are making money in Cameroon, which is frightening, because the question then becomes, at what point will this explode? At what point will this become unsustainable? Because at some point it will become unsustainable. And that's what led to the crisis in Argentina in 2002, where you might have heard of the famous saying, the money kept coming. The money kept coming because international lenders kept pumping money into Argentina while Argentina was collecting sovereign debts and paying debts. They were issuing bonds, and those bonds became very risky. Cameroon bonds today, the so-called Euro bonds, are becoming risky. When lenders lose appetite for those bonds, that's where you will see extreme crisis in Cameroon. The alarm bells are gradually going off, and it will soon become devastating. It's difficult to explain this, but Cameroonians need to understand that this administration, this government is burying Cameroon. They are pushing Cameroon into a situation where it will become extremely difficult to get out of. Even when the real president finally takes his position, whenever that may happen, or whoever the next leader will be, they will struggle to manage Cameroon debts because the country is being mortgaged at a rate which we haven't seen in many years. And that's being hidden from Cameroon. And that's why you go into cities, you don't see any infrastructure, even including Yaoundé, which is the capital city. Is one of the worst capitals you can talk of when you go around the world. But you hear of astronomical amounts of money being borrowed. Huge amounts of money being borrowed. And they are unable to run little projects or to finance small projects at the level of the municipalities. They need to go and borrow money because they don't have any. And these Cameroonians should be aware of it.
Let me turn to Eric Senior now. Eric Junior is essentially painting a situation of a time bomb in Cameroon. What is your take on this picture that Eric is painting?
Well, again, Chris, as I said, I'd have to leave at some point, but I'll let you know when. Eric has painted a perfect picture of the situation. I mean, I'm totally just in agreement with him on this. Let me give a take from a different perspective. I've been on the phone a lot today, and what I kept hearing was, as a matter of fact, twice I think during the day, somebody quoted this to me, John, something from the Bible, John chapter 8, verses 32. Is that how they put it? I don't know how, I'm not a Bible student, but John something chapter 8 and verses 32. Anyway, which says, "Seek ye the truth, and the truth will set you free." I mean, it's been told. On October, and a lot of people were telling me, on October 12th, God spoke to the people of Cameroon. It was the truth of October 12th. Until we get to that truth and admit it, these crises will continue. As Eric said rightly, this is not only a power grab, but it is a power grab that will destroy the country. And Cameroonians need to be aware of this and to understand it. The debt crisis will destroy Cameroon for maybe decades into the future. These fellows who are incurring the debt, who are out there borrowing, seeking to borrow 1.65 trillion francs, that's the exact amount, 1.65 trillion francs. If they get that money, Cameroon will be in problems for the next, beyond 2050. We will not be in a position to fund any major developmental investments in Cameroon. That is as clear, because we'll essentially they're not even borrowing the money to create factories, as Eric said. They're not borrowing the money to create wealth-creating initiatives, to invest in those initiatives. They're borrowing the money to pay debt. There are three reasons they're borrowing the money. One, to repay debt that's already been incurred, because a lot of these debts have come to, they've come to the point of repayment. So they're repaying debt. They're paying salaries to avoid social crisis, because if they go for a couple of months without paying salaries, people will take to the streets. So it is to preserve their power. And the third reason, paying debt, the third reason they're borrowing this money is to maintain a lifestyle. It's so that Madame Chantal and her kids can hire planes to travel to Switzerland and come back comfortably. That's the reason. Until we can stand up, Cameroonians can be aware of this, stand up and address the problem. This, in another 20, 30 years, they will not be there when these loans become due, when they've got to pay them back, because it's usually a 10-year moratorium before these debts get to maturity, and they will not be around. They may not even be around. So it's time to take responsibility. It's time for people to say enough is enough, and to say no to further debt. Yesterday, they got 65 billion francs. Yesterday. I don't know what, when I heard about it, because we initiated a number of things to try and stop any further loans. We're reaching out. And it's important that Cameroonians know this. We can all work to stop access to these for more foreign debt. The fact we should know is that it's important to know that there are vultures out there who will give $1 trillion if that's what Cameroon needed.
Correct.
Because they know that sovereign debt is one that will be repaid one way or the other. And we will pay sovereign debt by imposing more taxes on citizens. And when you impose more taxes, you prevent the economy from taking off. So we'll be imposing taxes in an environment where significant improvements in the business environment cannot happen. So we've got to, now is the time. It's never been this bad in Cameroon. It has never been this bad. Now is the time to take action, and I plead with my brothers and sisters, whether you're an Ambazonian or you're a Cameroonian or whatever you take yourself, as long as you belong in that geographical space, rise up now and demand the changes that have to take place. Issa Chiroma promises change. I've made it clear to Mr. Chiroma that I'm not for him necessarily. I'm for him because he represents change in Cameroon. I am for Cameroon. So in supporting, right now, Issa is the only person who has the mandate of the Cameroonian people talking about truth. It is this truth that will save us. It is this truth that will set us free. Issa has the mandate of the Cameroonian people. And it's the only reason I will urge everybody to come together and make sure this guy is in a 2D within the coming months. A number of us are working, putting everything we have into this to make sure it happens. But it's for a good reason. He will have a difficult first 2 or 3 years if he gets to the presidency, and when he does, especially the first couple of years, because a lot of things would have to be put in place. But by not getting him to do that now, we're just delaying the period, the amount of time it will take for Cameroon to recover. We've got to stop further loans. And the question you may want to ask is, if he doesn't take the loans, if he were to come in today and he doesn't take the loans, what will Issa Chiroma do? He will renegotiate contracts on all of our natural resources. He will impose that. He will seek an extension of the moratorium on debt payments to give himself the fiscal space needed to begin to do the things that would generate income for the country. This crowd now, they don't accept new ideas. They have no vision. There's zero vision. And then there's the worst part of it all is the power vacuum. The vacuum at the top. We don't have a leader. For all the good intentions he may have, and I don't know that Mr. Biya is concerned about anything but his own survival at this time. Zero, nothing. He has no vision for Cameroon. So we can't accept this.
Yeah, Eric, I get your point, and your reference to Issa Chiroma, one of the instruments that we thought he has at his disposal to use in fighting the regime in Yaoundé was to prevent creditors from continuing to borrow Cameroon some of this money we are talking about. Having refused to fight physically, many people thought, only power, action will remove Biya from power. He said, no, I'm not ready to shed blood. I don't want people dying. Now we thought he will now defer to the borrowing authorities, the creditor, to say, Cameroon is crippling. You cannot continue giving it money. But we see Biya getting money as usual. This thing that we say Cameroon is crumbling, we started hearing it from the days of Frundi, and they always survive. Why don't we think they are still going to survive today?
They will. They will survive. Because, as I said, there are these fiscal vultures around the world who are willing to put the money. Cameroon can get any amount of money it wants in the capital market anytime. So that's not, it's not their problem. They're not the ones who will pay the price. It's our children. It's us. It's the nation. So, that's besides the point, Chris. What we need to do now, and the population does not understand what's going on, what Eric and I are trying to do is to make the point to everybody listening to you, that everybody listening to you now, if they were to help get this information and help educate 5 or 10 other people, asking them to educate 10 others, it might eventually get to the rest of the nation. One, there's a power grab in Cameroon that must be stopped. There's a significant debt increase that needs to be nipped in the bud. There is an attempt to maintain the status quo that we must reject categorically. These are the things Cameroonians need to understand today. If they don't do it, ignorance is not an excuse. Ignorance is no excuse. So let's help. You're doing a good job by exposing many of the listeners to ABS today. You're doing a good job by exposing them to this. But it should not stop with you, and it should not stop with this broadcast. It has to continue with everybody, because this is the moment we rise and save that country, or we continue these ineffective fights that will take us nowhere, and will continue to have the worst national capital in Africa today, continue to have the worst state of infrastructure of any nation the size of Cameroon, will continue to have an economy that produces no jobs, young people who are being trained in universities who can't, have to go back home to their poor parents. Something needs to happen, my brother. Something needs to happen. It's not happening yet.
Eric Jr., what should happen here?
No, I think I must agree. I will just follow up with what Eric is saying there, because people need to understand this situation. The message needs to get down, because we're talking about crisis. We may be missing one which is also currently ongoing, because I see lots of messages and communications within Cameroonian cycles about a so-called solar power or solar light something scandal,
installation,
where it's generating a lot of conversation now. But Cameroonians should understand something. We are dealing here with a diabolical regime, a regime that does not care about them. Because this so-called solar light installation scandal, where a young 40-something plus year old French Samuel Thomas, the founder of the company that was awarded a contract by a presidential decree without going through any public tender to supply, 50,000 lampposts to Cameroon for an astronomical amount of money. Was it 21.4 billion?
Yeah, I think so.
Something around that figure. Cameroonians are agitating, as I keep saying, they agitate and then recall back without going further. They are only talking about the situation maybe because they are hearing of it now for the first time. What they do not know is that this same company, Cameroonians should hear this same company they are hearing about, Sona Design, was awarded an even bigger contract in 2022. It was bigger than what they're talking about now. In 2022, this same Sona Design was given a contract to supply 100,000 electric lampposts for almost 4 times the amount they're talking today. Maybe the information didn't go public, and that's why Cameroonians were not talking about it.
Where was that, and did they deliver?
They deliver. We don't know. I haven't got the statistics on what was delivered. But what is important to know is that the 2022 contract was meant to supply lampposts along the River Sanaga And some claim some of the light poles were installed at the Bamenda gas electric, whatever. But where did the rest go to? We are talking of 100,000 lamp posts. What is even more important is the pricing. Because mathematicians have calculated those amounts and came down to the fact that at that price, it means one lamp pole, which you can buy from China for 100 or 150,000, is costing Cameroonians 995,000, close to $1 million for one pole. And the same contract, the same company supplied similar poles to Togo. This same sonar design supplied these same poles to Togo for half that price, about 500,000 Togolese CFA. And that price included a 22-year contract of maintenance. Cameroon is taking it at double the price just for the lamp pole. So where is the rest of the money going to? What is happening? Cameroonians need to stand up. They need to be aware and take matters into their hands. It needs to be stopped because they are being robbed right in their faces on a daily basis.
Let me ask the both of you. We have a stalemate here in Yaoundé. You find a situation where you have two camps, and one camp cannot take a position or a decision because the other is bound to oppose it. The Douala Port example is very clear. What is going to happen in the days ahead when there is nobody to stand up as state authority to take a decision? Cabinet cannot be reshuffled. I mean, how is this going to go on? Should people see this as the beginning of the fall of the regime? And if it is, for how long can that last? Eric Senior.
Yes, Chris, I think, one of the things we're going to have to do is, we have to figure out how we bring in the Cameroonian media to help us take the word out. The example of the solar panels is so apropos, it's just so right, because it brings out all the evils of the system. The panels, the solar panels, Togo bought them at half the price, and there are individuals in Cameroon as we speak who are able to provide those panels at half the cost of what the Togolese use. In other words, if Togo got each panel at 500,000 francs, the people in Cameroon today, citizens, who can provide those panels at 250,000. Yet, the government is willing to pay close to 1 million francs for each panel. This is fact. This is verifiable fact. Why should Cameroonians accept it? I don't know what we're going to do to get the word across. But the solar panel scandal, the sonar design that is providing it, is owned, Eric said it, it's some 40-something-year-old who created the company, but he has shareholders that include the same people we're talking about. The same people.
Correct.
The Ngongos and the Chantals and the rest of them. Madame, what's her name? The lady in charge of housing, Kucha Cortez, I think her name is, that minister. She's she's a part of the deal, and of course she's coming in with Serac, Madame Biya's, the structure that Madame Biya owns, Chantal Biya. Look, the country, we're in a mess, brothers, we're in a mess. Let us figure out how we can get ourselves out of it. It's not the old man, the 93-year-old Mr. Biya, who has any powers to do anything. Biya is out of the picture. We are on our own in this. We are on our own, and it is time we rise up and tell the Ayolos and the Ngongos, I'm looking at them on your screen right now, tell them their time is over. We need to do that. There's the solar scandal. There's the debt scandal. There's the scandal of accountability in the ports, where most of our money, most of our national resources, a third of it comes in through the ports. Cameroon is in a total.
Eric, if
Yes.
I may ask you, Eric Senior, I understand that the African Union is meeting this month, and Cameroon is on their agenda. They are worried
That's
that
true.
should there be the collapse of the economy in Cameroon, it can spiral out to the Central African region, considering the weight that Cameroons carry within the region. What can the African Union do to bring back order into the country when there is no leadership?
Yes, very little that the African Union can do. Very little. But if the summit takes on the question of Cameroon, and I'm hoping that the summit will do that, because if Cameroon goes down, it's most of Central Africa that goes down with it. There's a probability, and people take note of this. There's a high probability of a significant devaluation of the CFA franc, and that devaluation might actually result in, obviously, the impact of devaluations, the economy-wide, they affect all parts of the economy. But what's dangerous about this is we may end up with the CFA of West Africa having higher value than the CFA of Central Africa. Further confusion. We've got to be able to take, look, if we don't stop the cacophony that we all are now realizing in the management of our economy, the absence of a vision, the absence of any plan to rescue the economy, the collapse. I think, I don't know how we're going to manage this going into the future.
All right, Eric Junior, you have something to add on this point before we move on to the next segment?
Yeah, nothing really much to add. I think Eric has said it quite clearly that if something isn't done to stop this, the future isn't good for Cameroon. We know the situation is bad; it will get worse, and Cameroonians shouldn't wait until it starts biting them, because it's already biting them. Cameroonians are struggling. People are struggling at the individual levels. But the situation can get worse if something isn't done. So Cameroonians need to understand that if Cameroonians, if they do not take their future into their hands and open their eyes and realize what is happening and engage in the process to bring about change in Cameroon, the situation will be worse. It will be terrible. It can be avoided. It can be stopped. And it needs to happen.
Let us look at the Issa Chiroma angle into the whole picture here. If I may ask both of you, do you guys still see any opportunity, any window for Issa Chiroma to return and take over the reins of power in Cameroon?
Chris, given that, since I have very little time to be with you, let me try and answer that before Eric comes in. It's a younger man with a lot of knowledge. I'm really impressed, Eric. I'll try to find you in the UK. If you can send your number to me, we'll get together.
Both of you are actually in the UK.
Yes, I am in one part of it, and he's in the other part. I think
Right.
you're in London. So I'll try to get a hold of you, or please, if you can, you're the younger person, find me.
I will.
And let's talk.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I will.
Chris. Yes, thank you. I think Mr. Chiroma will be in Cameroon. I'm convinced about it. I can't say with absolute certainty because God alone controls that. But I think Mr. Chiroma will be in Cameroon before long. How does he get there is the big question. we've got another aspect of this problem that we've not talked about is the army. How do we? There is a divide within the army.
Is the what?
The army.
The army. Okay.
The military.
The military. Okay.
Military. Yes, we definitely don't want them. We don't want a solution that is militarized. But who's injected the military into this is Ngongo. Ngongo sent soldiers to the ports. Ngongo sent soldiers to the ports to impose transatlantic. And thank God, some wiser brains, prevailed, and they're now moving towards negotiations. And again, as I said earlier, this is a forced compromise, a false compromise that nobody should accept. But we need to appeal in every which way we can, appeal to the military to serve the people, to serve the nation, not serve individuals. And the military in Cameroon should not allow itself to be used by Mr. Ngongo or anybody else. Ngongo has a lot of, because he controls his, to a large extent, and we are saying things as they are. People in Cameroon tend to say this under the table. Let's put it out upfront. Ngongo controls the bill. He controls the brigade d'intervention rapide, the Rapid Intervention Brigade. And they're the most equipped arm of the military in Cameroon. They are not especially liked by the rest of the army. We need to work with the rest of the army, take away the power from Mr. Ngongo, and remind both sides of that military that they should serve the nation. That's an important, this is something everybody should do. Mr. Chiroma alone cannot do it. But we need to step in, convince our brothers and sisters in the military that they have a duty to save the country. They have a duty to have truth. The truth of the elections prevail. That's the only way we can introduce the changes that need to be implemented. We need to change the constitution. We need to reconcile the nation. We need to revisit the judiciary, the justice system in Cameroon, and so on. There's so many of these things that need to be done. We need to rethink how the country is administered as part of the solution of the so-called Anglophone crisis. All of these things are on the agenda of the president elect. That's how he won the election, and we need to create the circumstances for him not only to get into power but to implement these things and force him to implement these things. So my take.
Are you suggesting a coup d'etat?
No, Chris. You see, it's important to understand what I'm saying. I was telling you that I don't want. There are times I'm hesitant saying things because I don't want my words twisted. The army should not be a part of this. The army should stand back and not allow itself to be manipulated either by the handful of people who are doing it right now or even by the majority of us. It should not be manipulated. The army should stand back and protect the country. That's what that's why billions are spent on them,
but
on that military.
At this moment, somebody has to grab that power and give it to the people, the rightful, the legitimate leaders of the country.
Let's not be excited about this. If we have some military man who has the heart and the sense of an Ibrahim Traore, well, maybe. But I won't go that route. I won't take that risk with the country. We see Olingi Ngema in Gabon. Thank God, is trying to do a good job. But what guarantees do we have that these, especially the very corrupt leadership of the Cameroon army, maybe below that there are some good people. But no Cameroonian should wish for a military takeover in Cameroon. Let us figure out how to do it.
Eric Jr., is that the opinion, the same opinion you hold?
It's accepted.
No military intervention?
No, I think I would.
Even a young captain like Ibrahim Traore emerging in Cameroon?
I wouldn't tell you what my thinking is on that, Eric. I'm sorry to interrupt, but don't take it, I'm not saying nobody, there should never be, if it comes to that, let it be. You didn't hear it from me.
All right, Eric.
Yeah, if it comes to that, let it be. I think that's the key word. Where the country is today, I think Cameroon is no more than ripe for any reasonable person who believes and understands that the country has been taken hostage by a group of individuals, by a few individuals. If we can have one courageous individual who thinks he can correct that situation, good and fine. But the message, the key message, which should be pushed across, is that military should be for the people. It should be there for the people. If it means doing what the people want, good and fine. If it means standing by and let the people do their job, good and fine. But it should be there for the people. Unfortunately, like my big brother Eric said, the military itself is very corrupt at the high level. And that was done intentionally, probably over the years. He ensured that at the very high level, those individuals who hold power were corrupted. What the Englishman or others would call having compromising or a compromise on each one of them. They all have files where it becomes very difficult for one individual at that level, at that very high level, to do anything because they are into businesses. We spoke earlier about Frank Biya, who is in Paris doing business, but what we don't know that Frank is doing is he is he's a gatekeeper for many of those generals in Cameroon who are into timber businesses. It's like the forest. Part of the forest has been shared amongst generals. Those very old generals who should be on retirement. Some go on retirement and come back because they have business interests. How can you expect anything good coming out from those individuals? So the only possibility, the only good aspect that Cameroonians can expect if they're lucky is to have a younger individual, someone in the lower ranks, to step up courageously and say, you know what, we need to bring this to an end. But Cameroon shouldn't rely on those old generals because they're all part of the game. They're all part of the system.
All right. Eric, I don't know if you want to add something there. Eric, there is some, I think you have a radio or a TV, something in your background.
I see. I thought that noise wasn't coming.
Yeah, there is some noise idea from the radio.
Yes, it's coming because my meeting is going on and
okay.
That's
Yeah,
part
we
of
can
trying to
hear the
manage.
feed from the background. All right.
Okay,
Gentlemen, please, you stay put in there. We'll move to the next segment when I get back with you.
I've got, Chris, I must leave in 5 minutes. I'll leave in 5 minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So please stay put. I'll be back in a few moments.
Never before. Advertising on ABS, you'll benefit from our extensive reach and dedicated viewership. We offer special advertising packages during primetime slots and popular shows. You'll also be featured on our social media platforms, reaching an even wider audience. Don't miss out on this opportunity. Take your business to the next level. Contact our advertising team at absafricatv@gmail.com. ABS can help you reach your target audience like never before. Advertising on ABS, you'll benefit from our extensive reach and dedicated viewership. We offer special advertising packages during primetime slots and popular shows. You'll also be featured on our social media platforms, reaching an even wider audience. Don't miss out on this opportunity. Take your business to the next level. Contact our advertising team at absafricatv@gmail.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. 11 February is coming up, and once again, we in Amazonia are putting out a message, and the message is what you find on your screen. Stay home. Stay home. 11 February is not for you in Amazonia. February 11 occupies a peculiar, painful place in Cameroon's political calendar. Officially, it is celebrated as Youth Day, a public holiday purportedly honoring the nation's young people, their energy, their promise, and their role in national development. But for the people of the southern Cameroons, where the 1961 United Nations organized plebiscite took place, February 11 is not a day to celebrate. It is a day of resentment, a day of mourning, and of rejection. Increasingly, it is openly described as a day of slavery. A day of slavery. To understand why, one must strip away the sanitized civic language of Youth Day and return to the historical fraud at its core. The 1961 plebiscite was never designed to create a binding political union. It was, by design, an opinion sampling exercise meant to measure the wishes of the people, the wishes of the people of the southern Cameroons regarding their political future after the end of UN trusteeship. Crucially, the people were never offered independence as a sovereign state. They were forced to choose between two deeply unequal options: joining Nigeria or joining La République du Cameroun, the former French colony. This alone renders the plebiscite morally and legally defective. But a greater fraud came afterward. The results of the plebiscite were manipulated and reinterpreted to suggest that the southern Cameroons had chosen independence by joining La République du Cameroun, the French colony. This phrase, still repeated in official narratives, is a legal absurdity. For there is no such thing as independence by joining another state. Independence means sovereignty. Joining another country without a treaty means capitulation or absorption, not independence. If the southern Cameroons had truly chosen to join La République du Cameroun as an equal partner, international law and political logic demand one thing: a treaty of union. History provides clear examples. Senegal and the Gambia formed Senegambia through a negotiated treaty. Tanzania and Zanzibar united through a formal agreement spelling out terms, powers, and guarantees of the union. Even federations and confederations are born through written instruments that define the relationship between the parties. The southern Cameroon has no such treaty with La République du Cameroun. We've said this again and again and again over the years. None exists between them. What followed the plebiscite should have been negotiations between two sovereign entities, that is La République du Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons, to determine the terms of a union, governance structure, language rights, legal systems, economic arrangements, and guarantees of autonomy. Some meetings did take place, most notably the Fumban Conference. But what emerged from Fumban was not a negotiated union. What emerged from Fumban were carbon copies of La République du Cameroon's constitution, imposed wholesale on the Southern Cameroons. This was not union building. It was annexation dressed up as a federation. From that moment on, ladies and gentlemen, the Southern Cameroonians began a slow, systemic descent into second-class citizenship. Institutions inherited from British administration, talking about the court, the educational systems, local governance, infrastructure, they were gradually dismantled or absorbed. The Anglo-Saxon legal tradition gave way to the civil law system. English, though constitutionally protected, was increasingly sidelined. Administrative practices were centralized in Yaoundé or moved to Yaoundé, and decision-making power migrated. Now, what had been promised as coexistence became domination. What had been sold as partnership became subordination. This is why February 11 or 11 February is called a day of slavery in the Southern Cameroons and Bazonia. It marks the moment when a people were stripped without consent and without treaty of control over their destiny, their institutions, and their way of life. And this point cannot be overstated. If a valid treaty of union existed, the present struggle for Ambazonian self-determination would indeed be an exercise in futility. One cannot repudiate a union that was lawfully negotiated and mutually agreed upon. But because no such treaty exists, the Ambazonian struggle is not rebellion. It is a demand to restore a stolen sovereignty. As the Southern Cameroonians grew increasingly vocal about the disappearance of their history, their identity and autonomy, the Cameroonian state responded not with dialogue, but with rebranding. February 11 was quietly transformed from a day associated with a plebiscite into Youth Day, a calculated attempt to bury historical grievance under parades, under uniforms, slogans, and false merriment. The intent was clear: erase memory, neutralize dissent, and alienate Southern Cameroonians from their own political history. That is why you find Youth Day instead of 11 February. Youth Day, in this context, ladies and gentlemen, is not an innocent celebration. It is a tool of historical laundering by shifting focus from the plebiscite to youth empowerment, so-called. The state, the Cameroon state, sought to detach a new generation from the uncomfortable questions of legality, consent, and union. But memory does not vanish because the state wishes it away. Today, February 11 or 11 February is not merely unpopular in the Southern Cameroons and Bazonia. It is detested. It is detested. and it will remain so. It is associated with betrayal, deception, and loss. It represents the beginning of a process that has culminated in war, displacement, and mass suffering. That is why, year after year, February 11 festivities are banned across the southern Cameroons and Amazonia. This year is no different. The ban is not symbolic, it is political. It is a rejection of a narrative that celebrates what many consider the starting point of their collective oppression. In the southern Cameroons, February 11 is not a day to march. It is a day to stay at home. Stay home. Staying at home is an act of remembrance. It is a refusal to legitimize a lie. It is a declaration that the people have not forgotten what was done in their name without their consent. The continued enforcement of Youth Day in Amazonia or the southern Cameroons exposes something deeper. The state fear of history. The state here standing for La République du Cameroon. A confident, legitimate state does not need to mask its origins. A state built on fraud does. February 11 reminds the Cameroonian state of its unresolved foundational crime. That is why it insists on celebration where there is grief, on parades where there is pain, on slogans where there is silence. But history has a way of resurfacing, no matter how deeply it is buried. For the southern Cameroons and Amazonia, February 11 is no youth day. It is not unity day. It is not a celebration of potential. It is the anniversary of a stolen sovereignty and an imposed identity. This year is as in many years past, the message is clear. Stay at home. Again, stay at home. Not out of fear, but out of principle. Not out of apathy, but out of remembrance. February 11 is not a holiday in the southern Cameroons. It is a reminder of the day that we were made slaves to La République du Cameroon. And that is that. Let me get back to Eric, who is about to leave very soon. Eric, tell me what is wrong with my monologue here, sir.
Perfect. Absolutely okay. Nothing wrong with the monologue. Look, right. I totally agree. A lot of things need to be fixed in that country. I was listening, I spent the day, well, part of today, listening to an interview late John Foncha gave in 1999. I'd love to send it, you may have heard it, I'd love to send it to you for anybody who wants to listen to it. In listening to it, I could see all that went wrong with the historical arrangements. We can regret the errors of the past, but what's most important now is look ahead and figure out what to do to bring peace, to bring development, to improve on the quality of lives of citizens, and to take away all that distracts from a future of hope and progress. That is what this should be about. And I totally agree with everything you said. I didn't see anything wrong with it. And it's time we not only educate, because it's part of this education, it's time we educate not only the people in the English-speaking part of Cameroon, it's time to educate the rest of the nation. And February 11th should be that day. As a matter of fact, a couple of months ago, I said Issa Chiroma should be back in power by February 11th. It was for that reason. It's not going to happen, obviously, because it's in a few days. But I think it is time the entire nation be educated on what February 11th represented. And it's not the case now. So there's a fraud, and we should stop that fraud. Chris, I must go. See, there's a meeting I convened about
all right,
an hour ago, and
you are very much free
they're winding up, so I have to go back and
leave.
say hi to them. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Eric. I really appreciate the time you shared with us. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, the other Eric left also for time constraints.
Okay.
So at this moment, I will go ahead and open the phone lines and let you call in to, if you have any suggestions, any contributions, that will be great. All right.
Back maybe in the future, if there are any questions for me, I'll be more than happy to come back and take them. Okay? So I just want to let you know.
All right.
All right.
Wonderful.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I will open the phone lines, but before I do so, I will take a brief break out. When I come back again, the phone lines will be open for you to call in and contribute to the broadcast. Please stay tuned. I will be right back.
The West lectures the world about democracy, then it bankrolls dictators. It condemns oppression, then it congratulates stolen elections. In this book, The Hypocrisy of the West, veteran journalist Chris Anu exposes the double standards that define modern global politics. From Africa to the Middle East and beyond, Western powers present themselves as champions of freedom while quietly propping up tyranny in the name of stability and strategic interest. This book pulls back the curtain. Why dictators are rewarded after rigged elections. How human rights become optional when power is at stake. Why some wars provoke outrage and others silence. How selective justice shapes the global order. Written in a bold, direct, and uncompromising voice, The Hypocrisy of the West is not a theory, it is a reckoning. It challenges official narratives, names uncomfortable truths, and forces readers to confront a world governed by convenience, not principle. You should read this book if you have ever questioned why some dictators are sanctioned while others are celebrated. Get your copy of The Hypocrisy of the West today on Amazon. Read it, question everything, then decide where you stand.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, The Hypocrisy of the West is again now live and selling on Amazon. You need a copy. All you need to do is log into Amazon.com, and enter the search term Hypocrisy of the West. Enter the search term Hypocrisy of the West, and you'll be able to buy a paperback copy, a physical copy, or you can buy a digital copy and download it right there. And then, but remember, you need Amazon Kindle. Amazon Kindle is a free app, I believe. Yeah, it's a free app. You download Amazon Kindle, and then you can then buy the digital version of the book and use. All right, the phones are ringing already. Let me see. Hello. Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Where are you calling from, sir?
Yeah, I'm calling from Amazonia. Thank you for picking my call. I just want to, I have two questions. The other, Mr. Eric, but unfortunately, Mr. Eric Chinje, who was supposed to really answer the question, has left. So, when I see the Southern Cameroons, like Mr. Eric Chinje and the other Eric and all others, trying to support La Republic of Cameroon and stay with the Southern Cameroons, I really wonder whether they bewitch the Southern Cameroon as a whole, because there has been a war in Southern Cameroon for almost 10 years now. Some of Southern Cameroons are not talking about it. They're talking about elections in La Republic of Cameroon, who have been killing Southern Cameroons for all these years. And now they support Chiruma, who is another person from the regime of Cameroon, who said there is no war in Southern Cameroon, that the military has not killed anybody in Southern Cameroon. After over 65,000 people have been killed, more than 500 villages in the world, and they stand here to fight for La Republique de Cameroon. So the question here is, can they not stand with the people of Southern Cameroon, especially now the friends of Amazonia who are knocking doors in Washington, D.C., and fight to liberate Southern Cameroon where they can have their voices? Or do they think if these few people succeed to bring the independence, will they come back to eat from the sweat or the what they didn't fight for? That's the question for all these Southern Cameroonians who are in support of La Republique de Cameroon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Unfortunately, both Erics have left. They left the set, and but your question is very legitimate, because I do not think they are the only ones who support, who sing Issa Chiroma taking over in La République du Cameroun. There are very many others out there like them who would want to see a change in Cameroon, not necessarily in Amazonia. But let's hope that they return to their consciences after they realize there will be no change in Cameroon itself. Thank you for the call.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the phone line is open. Go ahead and call in if you have a contribution. All right. All right, go ahead and call, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a contribution, and I will bring you in. Okay, but if there are no calls, then we will have to call it tonight, today, or at this moment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, in the absence of any callers, we're going to call it a night at this moment. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to coming back tomorrow with another very interesting show. Please, thanks again, and good night.